Hello, welcome to Late Night Creations. So glad you're here. If this is your first time stopping by, go ahead and click that subscribe button because after this video, you're going to want to. Today, I'm going to show you how I took a Valentine wood heart. It's one of those chunky ones that can stand up by itself. And I got it from maybe last year or year before last even. I've had them in my stash, had a big stack of them, so I decided, hey, let's see how many different ways I can style this. So I did 5 for you, and I hope that you enjoy this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I have a favorite. Comment below and let me know which one's your favorite. This first heart is so cute and so adorable, so easy and quick. I just took this Dollar Tree heart. It's a chunky one. It'll sit up by itself. And so this is the first one I'm going to show you. Super easy. Anybody could do it. Now, I peeled off the front paper. It's just like a piece of paper that's stuck on there. It's not even really painted on there. And it was really easy to pull off. The whole thing came off in one piece. And I'm showing you right there how easily it came off. And so it left a little bit of a paper side to that. So I'm going to use that as the back because I like the backs of my projects finished. The sides were already painted red. It's going to match our paper. No need to paint that. Sometimes I use Mod Podge to put the paper on, but I didn't want to do that this time. So I'm going to use these Amazon glue sticks I get off Amazon. They work really nicely. So we're going to trace the heart. You're going to see that I didn't place it on there right. I cut it out. I had to recut it because there kind of is a front and a back to these. I'm telling you to cut on the outside of your line rather than the inside, unless you want to paint the heart. You want to paint the heart red or a color that's in the paper, whatever paper you're using. Then if you don't get it just perfect, then it's not a big deal. I didn't want to take the time to paint this one because I wanted this to be a simple and easy one. So this heart did not match up because it's not a perfectly symmetrical heart. So now I'm trying to figure out which side and which way because I'm a little challenged with this kind of thing. So you'll see me tracing it again, and this time it works good. So I'm just cutting that out. Super simple. I love doing paper crafts. I love scrapbook paper. I have a real weakness when I go down that aisle at Hobby Lobby or anywhere that has paper. I love the colors. So now we're going to glue this piece down on here. Now I use a lot of glue stick, and I love the purple ones because you can see exactly where you already have the glue. This stuff dries really fast also. So I put a ton on there. I teach Sunday school, and we use these glue sticks a lot in class when we do our crafts. And I tell those kids, just put a lot. This is your chance to use a lot of glue. So I take a lot of time trying to get this just perfect on here. And luckily the glue doesn't, it's a little bit repositionable, but you have to be pretty quick with it. So I line it up just right, get it all lined up on there, and then just press it down really nicely and firmly. You can see I'm like really being a little pedantic about that, but I'm a little extra, but my crafts always turn out really cute. So there we go. Pressing down really hard, apparently. Not really pressing as hard as it looks, but just getting it all nice and smoothed out. And then I'm going to show you a little trick with my X-Acto knife. I have this favorite one, but apparently the handle broke on it right when I was trying to use it. So we'll just use this other one that has a brand new blade in it. You can just trim around the edge and it comes off really nice and crisp. I also have a technique using sandpaper that you can just sand down on it. I really didn't want to sand on my red paint. I use this from Dollar Tree, the sanding block, and when I kind of ruin it, then I just use my sandpaper from my sander and I just hold it on there and it fits really nice. So you can just kind of sand down around the edges and it'll make it nice and crisp. But I didn't really want to do that too much because I didn't want to sand that red paint off there. I'm going to use my little ladybug vacuum and vacuum up that dust so it doesn't get all over everything. Okay, now it's time to put a little bow on, do the finishing touch. You can pick any color ribbon that matches. I just thought since there was a little black in that and it's looking a little vintage that I would just use this black. Yep, I'm going to save that little cardboard circle because I have a whole little small tote, plastic tote full of them, because one of these days, I actually have used them in crafts before. It's just making a simple bow, wrapping it around, and this is pretty self-explanatory on bows. I spend a lot of time making the bow just perfect, though. I probably should not be so, you know, that's just how I am. So there we go. Put a little bit of hot glue on there. Stick that sucker down on there, and voila, there we go. Sits up by itself. You could put a hanger on the back if you wanted to hang it on the wall, or not. So here we go. Number 2. Same chunky heart, and we're just going to peel that off just like we did the first one. And we're going to use the smooth side, which is actually the back side, just because I don't want to have to sand all that paper off. Now I'm going to use this Rust-Oleum white linen chalk paint. If I can get it open. Okay, reminding y'all I have a trash can down there in the floor. I'm not actually putting trash in my floor or getting my floor all dirty. So we are going to give this a good coat of paint all around this on the sides. And the chalk paint covers pretty good. So I did 2 coats just because I wanted it covered good. Because a little later I'm going to put those shiplap stripes on there and sand it tiny bit, so I didn't want the white to come off too much. So good stripes on there. I mean, good paint. Good. Oh man, here we go. Okay, got a little spackling from Dollar Tree, and it was a little dried out, so I just squirted a little water in there, stirred it up, and it works just fine. So don't throw it away if it's a little bit dried up. I personally like to use wood filler better than this when I'm going to stain. If you're going to paint over it, it's not really a big deal, but I am going to stain this, and yeah, it doesn't stain over that spackling really good. I'm not really staining it. I'm using a glaze, but it didn't cover it really good. But we're layering several things together, so it's not a big deal. So both of these hearts that I'm using, I'm going to use this glaze from FolkArt. And it looks like a stain. That's why I was saying a stain a while ago, because it just looks like a stain if you just put it on there. Sometimes I put it on, wipe it off a little bit. Sometimes I just paint it on and leave it on. So this little heart was in a tray of hearts. I got it Michael's last year after Valentine's Day on clearance, or maybe it was Hobby Lobby. Can't remember. So now I'm going to put this on there, and I did sand it down just a tiny bit. But it didn't even really need it. That spackling comes off pretty easily. So just putting a thin coat of this on. And it depends on how dark you want it. If you want to leave it that dark, that's fine. I kind of wanted to wipe mine off a little bit so it wasn't quite so dark. You can see there a little bit where I put that spackling and it didn't want to cover good, and I'm trying to add an extra coat. It dries really fast. I was trying to add an extra coat, put some little lines in it, and I'm going to dab it a little bit, but it turned out fine because, like I said, when we layer these all these little hearts together on top of each other, you don't really even notice that. So it's no big deal. Now this, I'm going to show you now how to, with this little galvanized, I pulled that off of something else from Dollar Tree last year. So if you don't have one of those, you can always take a cookie sheet, these disposable cookie sheets from Dollar Tree. These are amazing. You're going to see me use these in crafts a lot. Just cut this part out that I'm showing you, and I have a piece left over here. I'm going to show you how I did this. Charmin over at FIXIN showed me this, a lot of things to do with this. She didn't show me this technique, but she showed me a lot of techniques to use with these cookie sheets. So these have kind of lines in them already. not really lines, but dots. And so I'm using them as lines. So I'm pressing down. You could use a Sharpie marker. Sometimes I use my Sharpie marker. You can just press down and make grooves. And then once you've made grooves on every other line, then you're going to flip it over and make lines in the opposite every other groove. Make grooves. You're making grooves, so it's going to look galvanized. So just keep pressing and making grooves on the front and then the back and the front and the back, and then you'll have that galvanized look. And then you can take whatever shape you're going to make, your heart or whatever, and you can just trace it around on your new galvanized metal and just cut it out. And it cuts out really nicely. It's easy to do with just a simple pair of craft scissors. So, yes, my friend over at FIXIN turned me on to doing crafts with these cookie sheets. And you can get a lot of crafts done out of a $1 or $1.25 cookie sheet. So, now I keep filling of that heart to make sure it's getting dry. So I'm going to glue my hearts together to layer them. I'm using my SureBonder hot glue gun. Love that thing. And my little silicone finger to keep myself from getting hot glue burns, because, oh, that is not fun. So the galvanized heart I had a chunk of wood on the back because it was raised. So if you want to raise yours, you can get this foam tape at Dollar Tree. You can just cut you off a little piece. It's double stick. I use this on a lot of projects. I absolutely love it. Or those little dots, those little round dots are also double stick, and they can add a little bit of height to your project. That roller tape is a little bit thicker, so it'll make it stand up a little bit more. So now we're going to just draw some lines. I just eyeballed it. If you need to measure it, then, you know, measure it. But I'm just kind of eyeballing it to make sure that it's straight. And then I'm going to just make some lines so it kind of looks like wood or shiplap, or, you know, just that look, whatever you want to call it. I'm using my little metal ruler. I get that at Dollar Tree. I love that metal ruler. It comes in so handy, and unlike the wooden ruler, I can use it with an X-Acto knife too. So this is Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle. This is a great brown to use. Now I'm going to dip my little fine tip paintbrush in this, and sometimes I wipe it on the table to get so there's not big clumps of paint on the end, so it kind of makes more of a pointy tip. And then I'm going to use my ruler to give me a straight edge so that I'm not going wonky all over everywhere. And if it's you don't want really a perfectly straight line, because we want that to look like the crack in the wood. I'm going to wipe that ruler off so there's not paint on it, because I don't want to get paint all over everywhere. So I'm just going to make all of these lines so that it looks like we have some little shiplap. One of my favorite DIY girls that I have seen do this many times is Caitlin over at, oh, I forgot her channel. Sorry, Caitlin. Crafts. I don't know. I'll link her in the description box. And she does a lot of really pretty stuff and makes it look really easy. But I did learn this technique from her, or I've watched her do this technique a lot, and so she inspired me to start doing this technique. So that's chalk paint, so it's going to dry super fast. So I'm going to do very, very light sanding. I'm just barely touching those lines just to kind of make it look a little more distressed, so they're not so strong. Then I'm going to take my little chippy brush. I got this at Michael's. You can get chippy brushes at Dollar Tree. You can just use an old brush that's kind of worn out. I'm going to wipe most of the paint off and do like a dry brushing technique right around the edges. And then I do a little bit in between there just to kind of make it look old. I want to just make it look old and worn out, like a little bit like wood, I suppose. So you can see me doing the edges. And you notice that I'm not really putting my paint back in that brush. Sometimes I'll try to, if it's not dry, use the paint that was still on the table, which is a poster board on my table, by the way, to protect my table and can just craft freely. Now our little layered heart, we're going to glue down there in the middle of that. Oh my goodness, I think this is looking so cute. This is one of my favorites. Then make a twine bow and just wrap it around my fingers. Leave a tail at the bottom. Wrap it around my fingers. However many times you wrap it is how thick your bow is going to be, obviously. Then I take it off. Or sometimes I just take my fingers out of the middle and hold it tight. But take it off. Wrap another piece of twine around the middle. Tie it off. Tie it good and tight. And I like to leave those strings so you have 4 little tails. Especially if it's a thick bow. If it's a thinner bow, I don't. But if it's a thick bow, I like to leave more tails. But you do whatever you like to do. A little spot of hot glue. Stick it on there, and we are done. It can sit up. You can put a hanger on the back if you want. I absolutely love this. Oh, I'm going to show you. So I have these little hangers I get on Amazon. You can hammer those into wood, or you can take a piece of twine. I always tie a knot in the bottom of mine. I forgot that I put a hanger on the back of this one. Sorry about that. And glue it down. And I always use a little piece of scrap fabric or scrap ribbon or something like that on the bottom just to give it a little extra added support. So you're going to see me put a big wad of hot glue on there. And then there's my little piece of, I think that might be just a little piece of scrap flannel that I had, or it might be, I don't know what that is, muslin, I don't know, something. Sometimes I use a little piece of scrap ribbon if I have a piece of scrap ribbon laying on my desk. So there it is. What do you think? I absolutely love that one. Number 3. This one was a little bit boho inspired, I think. I'm going to paint this with mineral, and you're going to see later I paint the edges a different color. But you could paint it any color just so that those skewers, you know, just in case in between you see the color. So it doesn't really matter what color, as long as it's a neutral color. I get those skewers in the big package at Dollar Tree. You can get them at Walmart. There's a lot of different places you can get them. They're very inexpensive. And you get a lot of them in there, and you can use them for a lot of projects. This was the most time consuming heart that I did out of the 5. And I'm not going to lie, it took me a while to do this. But I think the result is amazing. Very different from most crafts that I do. So I'm measuring. I started in the middle. I'm measuring. So you can use some heavy duty scissors, or I tend to use my needle nose pliers. Have that wire cutter part. I use wire cutters a lot to cut these. At some point, I'm going to use a little hot glue. At some point, I switched over and got my little mini miter saw out to cut those. And it cuts at an angle, but only an angle one direction. And so I did end up using my miter saw and the pliers and the scissors. I just kind of used everything to make it work how I wanted to. So I'm trying to get these at the correct angle. I'm marking the angle on the skewers, how I need to cut it. And I did use, see how I'm angling that to cut those at an angle so they fit around the heart. And I'm using hot glue, and I did switch over to some tacky glue, Aleene's. I think I'm saying that right, Aleene's or Aleene's. Aleene's maybe tacky glue, because the hot glue, it dried kind of fast and it was kind of a mess. It would kind of squeeze up in between the skewers, and it kind of made a mess. So I decided and switched over to that tacky glue because it worked better.
I wanna stay in your presence all day, and I don't care if the time slips away. There's no place I'd rather be when you're here surrounding me with your love. Oh, and I'm finding out that nothing compares with these endless moments we share. Now I have peace of mind, fulfillment of a greater kind when I'm with you. And I've never known love like this before. My heart is yours, and I've never known love like this before. Lord, you take my breath away. Oh, yeah. Lord, I can't imagine not having you here. And I find it so amazing what I feel when you're near. When it's just me and you, there's nothing that I can't do. So take me away. I never want this to end. And I've never known love like this before. My heart is yours, and I've never known love like this before. Lord, you take my breath away. I am surrounded by your love. It's everywhere, and all that I am is yours forever. And I've never known love like this before. And my heart is yours, Lord. I've never known love like this before. You take my breath away.
And here I'm showing you this tacky glue that I used, and I think this was so worth the time that I put into it. It's a little out of frame, sorry, but it turned out so nice, and it's all stuck down on there good. And I'm going to take the sandpaper. I'm going to just very easily sand off. I don't really want to make it smooth. I'm just sanding off those rough edges where when I cut them, it just left it a little bit rough. So I'm just sanding it down to make it a little bit smooth. Just take off the rough edges. I'm doing a really light hand because you know what? I don't want to pull those skewers off either. So they look like they're made from bamboo, so it kind of looks a little bamboo-ish, but I think it could definitely work with boho thing. So I decide that I do not like that color, that mineral color, so I choose a different color. These are just apple barrel paints. I'm not real sure which color I ended up with. Warm beige, warm buff, I think is one of my favorites, so that's probably the one that I used. I just put it up there, put the bottles up, and kind of color matched it to see which one I thought would look the best with that, and it covered really good over that already colored, I'd already painted it with the chalk paint, so covered really good, and I think it turned out a whole lot better with that. So yeah, this music playing in the background, Ayiesha Woods, amazing artist, amazing woman of God. Go check out her website, go check out her music. She's on Instagram, Facebook. Check her out. She's amazing. I've actually gotten to meet her and her family, and they're amazing. So here I just made a little bow. I had made a messy bow, and I'm not the best at making those messy bows. I just don't really like how they turn out. So I just made a twine bow. Love it. really, really love how this turned out. Another really simple one. We're just going to give this a good coat of white linen chalk paint by Rust-Oleum. I think I gave this 2 coats of paint actually. So got that red covered good. The chalk paint covers good, so we will just give it 2 good coats so it looks nice and finished. But if you do thinner coats of paint, they dry faster too. So I'd rather do 2 thin coats and have them dry fast than try to do 1 thick coat and wait and wait and wait on it to dry. I tell my kids in Sunday school that all the time, and they do an amazing job, and they're 10 and 11-year-olds. So now I'm going to take this paint by FolkArt chalk paint, and it's black. I think it's called Rich Black. I'm going to take my little chippy brush that I've been using, and I'm just going to go around the edges. I'm not really sure what you want to call this look. It's not really distressed. I guess anytime we use a kind of a dry brush, we call it distressed, but this isn't really distressed. It's just kind of a smoky look or an outlined kind of look. I don't know. Just gives it some dimension, some texture. I love dimension. I love texture. You know, if you like a flat, clean look, then that's fine too. You could totally leave it plain white if that's what you want to do, but I just think this makes it pop when it's almost like an outline right there on the outsides. Do it pretty heavy on that, and then I decided I got it a little too heavy in the middle from what I wanted, so I took my sandpaper and lightly sanded it. Another option would be to dry brush white back over it. But I didn't want to have to clean that little brush. That's my favorite little chippy brush. I didn't want to have to dirty up another brush because I love cleaning paintbrushes. Said no crafter ever. So, yeah, I don't like to wash paintbrushes. So, cleaning all that sand up with my little ladybug vacuum cleaner. Put the lids back on. Oops. Decide I'm going to do something else with that paint while I have it out. So I got these little crosses at Dollar Tree. They came in a package with quite a few in there. And they're really cute because they're brown and you don't even have to paint them. But I wanted to paint this particular one in black to go with our project today. So use my little tweezers, my little handy dandy tweezers I use all the time. Move it around so I'm not getting fingerprints all over it. Now I'm just drawing on my table. Yep, drawing on my poster board, tracing my heart, because I want to give some options besides using the cutting machine all the time. And if you don't have good handwriting, you can print it out on, I should have shown this technique, but you can print it out on your printer. You can use some carbon paper and go over it, and then you can use your Sharpie with it. I'm okay with my handwriting. I just wrote "Then Sings My Soul" because I love that song, "How Great Thou Art." You could put any words that you want to on there. I also thought about writing "Great is Thy Faithfulness." I mean, there's a lot of different, "Be still and know." There's a lot of other really good sayings, or just put your own favorite saying on there. But that's just when I decided to do the musical theme on this one, that's just the song that came to my head. Got in my spirit, so there it is. And I'm doing that with the Sharpie on that paper like that because the paint gets on the marker and it tends to make it feel dried out. But if you kind of swirl it around on a piece of paper, it'll kind of almost re-ink it. So now I am going to attempt this messy bow once again. I think if I keep trying it enough times, possibly I may actually make one that looks decent. It's just not what I'm going to say grew up with. Been crafting since I was about 12 years old. Yeah, and I'm old, so that's a long time. And I just kind of got stuck in the ways of making bows that I did. And I've seen these girls make these awesome messy bows with just these strips of fabric, and they're so cute. But mine don't look so cute. Maybe if you know how to make them and you're watching me, give me some pointers and some tips. But I think I do it just like the other girls do, but you know, Maybe it's the ribbon I'm using. I don't use enough ribbon. Maybe my ribbon's too thin. I don't know, but this one turned out okay. It turned out, obviously I used it, so it turned out, like I wanted it. And this ribbon is more like cord. It's like a cord, and the ends spray really bad. And so I thought that would be kind of a cute look. And I got this musical ribbon off Amazon because I have 8 grandchildren, and my 2 older boys don't come to Camp Gigi anymore, but the girls and little Jack come to Camp Gigi every year. I have them for 5 days, and it is fun-filled, fun-packed, and we have a theme, and last summer was Strike Up the Band, and so we had a lot of musical themed decor and what have you with it. And so I had bought this ribbon thinking I was going to do something with it, and I didn't really do anything with it. So I had it left over, and when I decided I wanted to do a heart with a music theme, then I was like, aha, I have that in my stash. See, it pays to be a craft hoarder. I promise it does. Oh, but you have to have some space. My garage is full. My craft room is full. I can barely walk around in my craft room. Anyway, there we go. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art. And his grace is sufficient. So, here we go. This is our final heart. That same chunky heart from Dollar Tree. Peeled the front off, using the back. Got this pretty pink from Michaels. I believe it's called, I don't know if it's rose or pink. I mean, it's just a simple one. I just go and I just pick out colors I think I will like and use, and I just buy them. So give this a good coat of pink. I use my little chippy brush. I'm going to dry brush this white on here a little bit. I'm not going to do it too heavy, but just like I said on the last one, I like to have a little dimension. And I'm going to glue those half beads around the edges, so I want to be able to do this before I glue the beads on. I'm still trying to decide if I like to glue the beads on before I paint my base coat or after. I really think I like doing it the way I did this one, where I paint my base coat and then put the half beads on and then paint the beads. I think it's a little easier and it goes a little quicker. Here's my little bag hack. Put your paint brushes in a little plastic baggie, or wrap it in some press and seal or whatever you have to preserve it until you're going to use it again, and it'll stay moist. Here I go with this tacky glue. Now I keep it stored upside down because see, I'm having to shake it. I store them upside down so the glue stays at the tip. So I'm just glue these little half beads that I get at Amazon. I glue them all the way around, and see, I like this tacky glue because it doesn't dry quite as fast as the hot glue, and I can move them around if I make a boo-boo, which I do. I have to move them around to get them straight and get them even, but it does dry pretty fast, like maybe 10 minutes, and they're dry enough to paint anyway. So I just glue those all the way around the edge. I just think this makes it, I don't know, I love this. I don't know what it makes it. It makes it beautiful. So now I'm going to paint those beads. So I think that's easier to do it with the background already painted. I'm trying to keep that pink off my white that I already distressed, or the one did distress it, but whitewashed. I'm using my heat gun to dry it. You can use a blow dryer, just because I was a little impatient and wanted to get on with this project. It was the last one. Doing my little dry brushing on the beads. I love this look on the beads. I love it doing it with a lot of different colors too. I've made a lot of projects where I've done a lot of different colors, like with beige and brown, and different grays, and just doing the beads on top a lighter or a darker color. I've done it on some candle holders. It's just a really fun technique, and you get a beautiful result in the end. So I do it until just as much as you just do, as much as you want, as little as you want. You don't have to do it at all, but I love it. I love it, love it. That's my style. So it's looking good. Now I used my Cricut, or no, I did not use my Cricut. I used my StarCraft Solo machine, my new machine, because it cuts out the tiniest little letters, and it's so easy to weed out. I'm showing you here how to weed. These tiny little letters are hard to weed, and so my Solo StarCraft by StarCraft makes it easier. I originally cut this with my Cricut and it messed it all up. It did not cut it good. I like to use the Cricut a lot because it's kind of plug and play. It's just quick and easy. Anybody can use a Cricut. I've had 3, maybe 4 of them, because my husband is awesome, and every year for Christmas he knows that if he gets me the new upgraded one that I'm gonna love it, and he wants to get me something that I love, and so he's amazing. But the Solo StarCraft is a little bit more, I don't even know how to explain it. It's a little more complicated to use. There's definitely a learning curve, but the software that comes with it is amazing. Okay, here's my Frisco craft transfer tape. I love this stuff. So Wendy over at White Sparrow Living turned me on to this. Thank you, Wendy, because I absolutely love it. I want you to see how easy that peels off. Turn it over and wow, it comes off so easy. I use this a lot with my Sunday school kids too. We do a lot of crafts with vinyl. I'm teaching them how to do the decals, and they love that they're not having to scrape and peel and scrape and peel and scrape. I'm just putting some little slits in there so it's easier for me to scrape it down. I did not get it centered in there perfectly, but I'm okay with that. It's a handmade craft. Even machine-made crafts, even home decor that you get in the big stores, they're not perfect. Things are not centered. That drives me crazy if I'm paying big bucks. But anyway, it was hard to come off on that paint, so I had to scrape it a little bit. And I was just using that little wooden heart. Here I'm telling you, I didn't get it centered good, so I'm having to push that little S down in there close to that bead. But I still think it turned out good. I love it. I absolutely love this one. That one is my favorite.